What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and it is time, once again, to start talking about the NHL playoffs. Every team in the league has around 15 to 18 games left on their schedule, which means it's really time for the playoff push, which means it's time for us to talk about the playoff push, who's going to get in and who's not going to get in. So we're going to do this the exact same way we did it last year. It's going to be split up into two videos. The first video, this one, is going to talk about which four teams are going to win these four divisions in the NHL, represent these divisions as their champions. The second video, which you're going to watch after this one, is going to be about which teams are getting into the playoffs, which teams are going to miss the playoffs, and what the first round playoff matchups will be in, of course, my humble opinion. Any team that is within 10 points of their division lead right now, we're going to be talking about as in the conversation to win these divisions. 10 points might seem like a lot, but I mean, if you got 15 games left on your schedule, there's 30 points up for grabs there. So, you know, I thought 10 points was at least somewhat realistic. So that's the metric that we're going to use here. Let's get started. So we're going to start with the easiest division right now in the NHL to predict. We're starting in the Western Conference, and it's going to be in the Pacific Division. So right now, as of press time, the standings in the Pacific Division look like this. Anaheim's out front with 91 points, Vancouver's in second with 78, Calgary in third with 77, LA in fourth with 75, San Jose in fifth with 72, with Arizona and Edmonton in sixth and seventh with 49 and 47 points respectively. The reason that this is the easiest division to predict is that this division is already over. Anaheim has won this division essentially, and barring some kind of monumental collapse, they are going to represent the Pacific Division, and in all likelihood, again, barring a big collapse, will probably represent the Western Conference as the Western Conference regular season champion. Anaheim, again, 91 points. They're 13 points clear of Vancouver. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. They're playing really well. Sure, the teams behind them have a game or two in hand on them, but you're not going to make up 13, 14 points in a game or two in hand. So Anaheim, of course, my prediction to win the Pacific Division, really not going out on much of a limb there. Also, FYI, I expect Anaheim to go something like 13-2, 12-3, maybe 11-4 down the stretch. I think they top 110 points with ease here, probably topping 115 points too. Since we're in the West, we might as well stay here. Let's take a look at the Central Division, which is, of course, a little more entertaining. So in terms of who might possibly win this division, there's only 7 teams in it. To be perfectly honest, there's 4 teams that are still, like, mathematically alive here anyways. You got Nashville right now out in the lead with 89 points, St. Louis in second with 87 points, Chicago third with 84, Minnesota fourth with 79 and playing some great hockey right now, Winnipeg fifth with 78, Colorado 6th with 71, and Dallas bringing up the rear, 7th place with 68 points. So in terms of who's going to win this division, you know, Nashville obviously out in front right now. St. Louis is right there, just 2 points back. Chicago's right there, just 5 points back. And Minnesota, who you probably could have chuckled like, yeah, Minnesota's going to win this division. Minnesota's 8-2 in their last 10 games, and Devin Dubnyk is playing like the second coming of Patrick Waugh. And they've really pulled themselves into the conversation here in terms of the division. So let's start up top there with Nashville. Nashville having a phenomenal bounce-back season. Second season, of course, with Seth Jones, and coming off of, again, that horrible season that they had last year. Pekka Rinne really rounding back into form. My problem here with Nashville is they've really kind of started to fall off here. They've only won 2 games of their last 10. And have really come back down to earth here and let the other teams in this division get back in here. Compounding the problem is that the teams behind them, those being, of course, St. Louis and Chicago, have games in hand on them in a pretty tight race. St. Louis, the team right behind them, only 2 points behind, has 2 games in hand on Nashville. Of the 15 games remaining, they might have double-digit winnable games left, but there's some games in there that they're going to lose. Like, they're going to lose in Los Angeles. They're going to lose in Anaheim because they've not been a great road team this year. The team that I think is going to win the division is St. Louis, the team that's right behind them. Yeah, they're only 5-5 in their last 10. Yeah, they only have 33 regulation and overtime wins compared to Nashville's 35. But, again, like I said, 2 games in hand, and I think they're going to win those 2 extra games. I'm not going to count out Chicago here. Chicago, I think, has the easiest remaining schedule of these 4 teams that we've been talking about here. I honestly think they'll probably win a dozen of their remaining 16 games. There's really winnable games in there for Chicago. I think they're going to really make a run at this. They may make a run at pushing Nashville all the way down to 3rd in this division. I mean, let's be honest. Nashville's making the playoffs. Like, they're not going to make the playoffs. But I certainly don't think they're going to win the division. Chicago's going to give them a run for their money, but I really do think St. Louis probably going to win about a dozen of their remaining games here. 12-5 in the last 17. I can see that happening realistically. I can see them topping 110 points. Chicago and Nashville, it's going to be a bit of a struggle for them to get to 110. I think St. Louis is going to top that. My prediction is that the St. Louis Blues will win the Central Division in the West. Oh, and while we were talking about Minnesota's not that good a team. Like, they're playing way better than they should be playing on paper. I mean, look, Dubnyk's not that good. He's on a real hot streak right now, but he's going to come back down to earth. I'm not saying that he's a horrible goaltender. I don't think he is. But he's going to come back down to earth, which I do think is going to happen sooner rather than later. They're going to fall back down to earth. Minnesota certainly not winning this division, and it's going to be a struggle for them to make the playoffs, but we'll talk about that later. So, out of the West, I expect Anaheim and St. Louis to be the 2 teams to win those 2 divisions, the Central and the Pacific. Let's go to the Eastern Conference. In the East, we're going to start with the Metropolitan Division, which I personally think is going to be the most entertaining and interesting division to watch for the rest of the season. I'm sure the Central would have something to say about that. The standings in the Met, as of right now, are as follows. The New York Islanders, the upstart New York Islanders, lead this division right now with 88 points. Second place is the Rangers with 87 points, again, just a point behind. Right there is Pittsburgh with 85 points in 3rd place. 4th place is Washington with 82 points. 5th place, Philadelphia, 69. 6th place, New Jersey, 66. 7th place, Columbus with 58. And bringing up the rear is Carolina with 57 points. So obviously the 4 teams that we're going to be talking about here in terms of have a chance to win this division, it's going to be the Islanders, the Rangers, Pittsburgh, and I'm not willing to count out Washington. They've been playing fairly well lately, so not willing to count them out just yet. Obviously, this has been a phenomenal season for the Islanders. No one, I don't think, expected them to be at the point that they're at right now, that being leading the division. I think people thought that they would be competitive for like a wild card spot in the playoffs, but I don't think anybody thought they'd be fighting this hard for the division. I've got bad news for Islanders fans. Bad news number 1, the teams behind you are playing better hockey than you are right now, at least in the last 10 games. Bad news number 2, the 2 teams directly behind you, the ones that are within 3 points of you, all have at least as many regulation and overtime wins as you do, and the team directly behind you has 2 more. Bad news number 3, you have the least remaining games of the 4 teams that we're going to be talking about here, those top 4 teams. You only have 15 games left on your schedule, and the Rangers, who are right behind you, have 3 full games in hand on you. So obviously you can see where I'm going with this. I don't think the Islanders are winning this division. Of these 4 teams, the Islanders and the Capitals have the most difficult remaining schedule, and that's a problem given that they also have the least total number of games left. While Washington and the Islanders have around 9 and 10 really winnable games left on their schedule, respectively, you look at the other 2 teams, the Rangers and Pittsburgh probably each have about a dozen winnable games left on their schedule, if not a couple more than that. So I just think with larger schedules and more winnable games on the schedules, I think it's much more favorable for the Rangers and Pittsburgh to talk about winning this division than it is for the Islanders. I'm going to take the Rangers here. I think the Rangers are the team in the best position right now to win this division. They have games in hand on everybody else in the division. They got 18 games left, which is great. Now that's going to be a lot of hockey in a short period of time, but it gives them many more opportunities to get points, win this division. That's the way I think it's going to go. I honestly think the Rangers are going to top 115 points here, which means I think they're probably going to be the top seed out of the Eastern Conference, though we'll talk about the Atlantic Division in a second. That's the way I'm going to go with this, folks. My official prediction for the Metropolitan Division is that the New York Rangers will win this division with around 115, 117 points, but all 3 of those teams will probably easily crack 100 points, and all three of them honestly have an outside shot at 110. And for this video, we will finish off with the Atlantic Division in the Eastern Conference. Really three teams to talk about here in terms of possibility of winning this division. Standings in the Atlantic Division as of right now look like this. First place, Montreal, my Montreal Canadiens, 90 points. Second place, Tampa Bay with 88 points. Third place, Detroit with 83. Fourth, we have Boston with 76. Fifth, we have Florida with 72. Which is a really interesting occurrence to me. Sixth, Ottawa with 71. Seventh, Toronto with 57. And bringing up the rear, the Buffalo Sabres, tanking for Connor McDavid. In eighth place, 43 points. So when I said we got three teams really to talk about here, we're talking, of course, about Montreal and Tampa Bay, and I'm not willing to discount Detroit at this point, only being 7 points back, and they do have games in hand on the two teams in front of them. Detroit's probably got the toughest schedule coming home here. Again, luckily they have the most games left, but if I was Detroit, I would be content with winning probably 10, 11, maybe 12 of those 18 remaining games and finishing somewhere around 105 and 106 points. I don't think that's going to be enough to win this division. It's been a great season for Detroit. I think they'll easily top 100 points, but I don't see them winning the division. So it's going to come down here to Montreal and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has 3 more regulation and overtime wins than does Montreal. Montreal holding a game in hand with a 2-point lead in the division. I think both of these teams are likely to win about 9, 10, maybe 11 games remaining on their schedule. I don't think it's going to be quite enough for Tampa Bay to catch Montreal. Tampa Bay could catch fire, and they could move past Montreal. I'm not saying that that's not possible, but all I'm saying is I think with that 2-point lead and a game in hand, and with the remaining schedules and both winning right around the same amount of games, I think Montreal is going to be able to hold on here and win the Atlantic Division. I think both of these teams have a really realistic shot at 110 points, but I think Montreal is just going to hold on enough to win that division. So, in the Eastern Conference, I like Montreal to win the Atlantic, and I like the New York Rangers to win the Metropolitan. Again, moving to the Western Conference, Anaheim, they're going to win the Pacific. They've basically already won the Pacific. And in the Central Division, I like the St. Louis Blues to move up past Nashville to win the division there. All right, folks, that's it. That's it for the division winners talk. Now, go to the next video. That's the really important one. That's the one where we talk about which teams in the East and the West are going to make the playoffs and which teams, unfortunately, are not.